And this is actually what a lot of people want, is like, I don't want to think about exercise. I want to just get up and do it. And the same thing with your workday. You want to just do things out of habit, which is rote. And routine might be a set of habits that you do, a set of things that you do. And you could hear it in the word routine that there's not necessarily a lot of intentionality in that consciousness. Okay, let's talk about rituals. Specifically, I'm going to talk about 3 rituals that will change your workday, change your entire day. These aren't rituals for your entire life, but specifically your workday. And before we get into the specifics of those rituals, let's talk about rituals in general. And to start out with, I like to make a distinction between ritual and habit, or ritual and routine. So habit would be something that you do repeatedly, like automatically, like often without even thinking. For example, I might be drinking this water bottle when I get thirsty without even thinking about it. I'm not trying to do it. I'm not putting a lot of effort or focus into it. Some of those habits are things we think of as bad habits, smoking and, scrolling on social media, for example. But a lot of times there are habits that we're trying to form. And so I might be like, I want to do a morning meditation or, an afternoon walk or workout. So these are habits, and they're things that we can get ourselves to do repeatedly without thinking much. And this is actually what a lot of people want, is like, I don't want to think about exercise. I want to just get up and do it. And the same thing with your workday. You want to just do things out of habit, which is rote. It's not, it doesn't have a lot of presence, a lot of thinking involved, a lot of like, I'm really showing up in a very intentional way. It's just done without thinking. And routine might be a set of habits that you do, a set of things that you do. And you could hear it in the word routine that there's not necessarily a lot of aliveness in that, a lot of intentionality in that consciousness. So this isn't like bad. We're not saying habits and routines are bad. These are actually necessary, I think, in a lot of ways. We want to function as adults. So there's things that we need to do with routines and habits, but you can see that if it's something that's going to require you to create some focus on something that you don't already know how to do, they won't work. So for example, if I want to write a book and I've never written a book before, I can create a habit or a routine around writing, but a habit is doing something without even thinking about it. This writing is going to require my full focus and attention and really pouring myself into it. So habits don't quite work for that. What a habit can do is get you to the computer, get you to the writing space so that you set yourself up for getting there. But then once you're there, the habit doesn't actually work. I wanted to make this distinction. Habits and routines are often without any thinking involved. Not that thinking is necessarily good for everything we're doing, but sometimes we need to pour ourselves into something and it can't be done rote. So this is all distinct from ritual. Ritual is something that we might do repeatedly, but we elevate something from the ordinary, the routine, into something that's higher than that. A word that I like to use is sacred. Now, not everybody resonates with that. And if you have some, they think that's like hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo, woo woo kind of stuff, don't use it. Sacred is the word that I like to use, but you might use something that's elevated to, a higher consciousness, like what you really want to focus on. Your purpose would be another thing. Or another place to come is wonder. Like when we look at the stars or the moon or nature, like a grand sweeping view of nature, we can have wonder. Whereas when we're just doing our regular thing, sipping that water bottle, we don't have a lot of wonder. It doesn't feel like awe-inspiring. But ritual will elevate that to something that can be really profound, really full of wonder and awe. Why is that important? Well, if you're doing something that is purpose work, that is meaningful, that has resistance and some fears around it, you don't know if you can actually do it, then ritual and routine won't actually work with that. And so what we can do is elevate this purpose work, the uncertainty of the purpose work that we're doing, to something that we are willing to really work with deeply. We're bringing devotion to it. And that's what ritual does. Ritual often will come from, it's associated with religion. I actually think that some of the most beautiful things in religion are the rituals. So as much as I might reject religion based on some early upbringing stuff, I actually really use religion as inspiration sometimes. I'm not religious myself. I am Buddhist, but an atheist, secular Buddhist. But you don't have to be Buddhist. You don't have to do any of that. Christianity has rituals. I was in some ways brought up Catholic. And so they have, the ritual of the Eucharist, the body of Christ. There's rituals like that where they're elevating like this little wafer and this, into something that's actually profound. And rituals are found in Buddhism as well. They elevate the meditation, for example, into something that you're doing for all beings. You see it in yoga and Hinduism. You see it in all religions, actually. Muslim and Shintoism and Taoism, and you can name the ism. There is ritual associated with it. But it's not just in religion. It's actually in all spiritual things. If you go to Native American traditions or the traditions of any native peoples, you'll find ritual. And it's not just in spiritual stuff. You can find ritual in when we sit down to eat together and maybe, well, in this case, the example is religious, but you might hold each other's hands and pray. That's a ritual, and it's really communing together. But it elevates eating into something that is more special. Okay, so whether you're sold on ritual or not, I'm going to share with you 3 rituals that actually elevate my workday. The first one is the first thing that I do in the morning after I drink some water and do some, self-care things. I sit down to work, and the first thing that I do is I open up a document to start planning my day. And I think of this as a way to have an intentional day. So planning the day, I look at my calendar items, but then I also look at all the things that I wanted to do that day, things that I had already put on for this day. So the day before, I might have made a list for today before the day starts. These are the things that I wanted to do, but I might be adding to it as the day goes on. Okay, I can't do this today, so I'm going to put it in tomorrow's block. And then as I add to that, I maybe make a really long list that's too long. So I might put some of those off until the next day. And so first part of my planning is, what do I want to do today and what do I not want to do? So I'm really intentional about what I'm going to be able to fit within the container of this day. And then I block it off. I block off those things. And those blocks aren't set in stone. I can move them around. But I do like to block them off. And this means that if I'm intending to do it, I'm going to find the time. This is about a 30-minute task, and I'm going to put it right here between these calls. Now, that doesn't always go the way that I plan it, but it is a way for me to be more intentional. Some things I will, at the end of the day, move them till tomorrow's block or the day after. But in the morning, I like to look through and what do I want to do with this day? That's the first thing I do, is some planning. The next thing I do in this little ritual is think about what's getting in the way. What might block me? And this helps me to look back, the day before, I forgot to do this. I didn't account for this. And so today, as I think about what the potential obstacles are, what are the blockers, I am getting present to those blockers so that I can do something about it. If I have too many things on my plate, maybe I need to take some off. If I haven't made enough time for self-care or taking care of myself in some way, maybe I need to create a little bit more spaciousness in my calendar. But whatever the things are, I'll write them down. And then finally, I write down, what are my fears for today? What are the things that I'm afraid of on this list or about the day in general? So I get clear on all of that. And then I choose, what's the way I'd like to be that day? This is a way of being. And so this is something that I'm practicing, is this way of being. If I want to show up, lit up and full of life, then that's the way I want to show up. That's what I put down there, lit up. But if I want to show up, mindful and present or playful or adventurous or serving a bigger purpose, I write that down. And this is bigger than my fears. This is bigger than the obstacles or even bigger than the plan. It's the way that I want to be that day that I'm going to practice. And so that's what I do with my morning planning ritual. And I really let myself turn it into a ritual by giving it some space, not just diving into my emails or messages, not just responding to things, but actually taking that space as if it were something really important. One last thing I do in that morning ritual is I look at what are the things that are important to me this week, this month, this year. So the things that I am working on, maybe I've set some milestones for myself. Maybe I have committed myself to things this week. I've listed those out in my document and I look at those every day. I don't have to do anything about it once I look at it, but I might be like, oh, I've forgotten to block something off about this. And so these help me to keep those things front and center, because what I tend to do is write them down and then forget about them. And so by putting them into my morning ritual, what I've done is I've allowed myself to keep those in view, not take my eye off the ball, which is what I tend to do. And so I elevate it by giving it space, and I really be intentional in that space. I really care about what I'm doing there because this matters to me. This allows me to align my life with what I really care about. And when I'm done, I'm done. I close it out and then I can do the first thing on that list. I also do a clearing out thing in the morning where I just kind of clear out my email inbox and messages and check my team project and messaging app. So I'll clear that out. It usually takes me about 20 minutes. I'll also do a little bit of finance work, but those two are secondary to the planning and intentional ritual that I mentioned already. I don't consider those part of my ritual. They're things that I would do after that. Okay, so that's ritual number 1, the morning planning ritual. And you can see it's more than just planning. It's actually allowing myself to get clear on what my fears are, what my obstacles are, what my goals are. You know, am I aligned with those? So I do that in the morning. I do another thing in the evening, which is when I'm closing out my workday. And this allows me to mark the closing of the work so that I can now just relax and rest. What a lot of people do is they don't have a clear line, demarcation. And what that means is that your work bleeds into every part of your day. You might be going to sleep past midnight, still doing some work. And that's fear. Fear has us doing that. So what I like to do is have a clear shutdown ritual. And the way that I do that is I've gone through my list, but it's time for me to go and do a workout. So I'm like, I can keep working past the workout, but I would actually like to really shut down. And so what I do is I take a look. Am I pretty satisfied with this, what I've done today? And, is there anything that is left that I really need to do? And if not, I'm going to push those other things till tomorrow's list. So I just knock them over till tomorrow. And then I do a little review. And so that's the first thing, again, is move back the things that I didn't finish, move them till tomorrow. And am I okay with that? Sometimes I'm not. I'm like, no, I really want to get this done before the end of the day. So I won't do the close ritual until I've done the things that I think I need to do today. Then I move things to the next day, and then I just review. What is it that I did get done? And if I've followed my list, I've checked off the things that I've done throughout the day. At some point, I'll make a video about the to-do task list app that I use that also includes some planning. But for now, it doesn't really matter what you're using for a to-do list. As long as you have a list and you're checking it off, you should have a list of things you've already done. So I look back on what did I accomplish? And I share that with my team. So there's a little bit of accountability. I look back on how did I go? Is there anything that I learned from that? Anything that I'm really happy with that I like to celebrate? Anything that got in the way that I like to learn about? And so this is a little bit of a review. I might put some gratitude things on here as well. This is really like looking back on the day. What am I grateful for? This can be as long or as short as I want to. If I'm really pressed for time, I'll just list the things that I did. But I like to expand it to some of these other things and take a little bit of time to really close out my day and feel complete about the day. And then when I close, I'm done. I might go back later to do 1 or 2 things or make a little note. But really, I like to let myself just be done and be relaxed and not always be thinking about work for the rest of the evening. That's ritual number 2. Ritual number 3 is for the most important task that I have that day, the one that I'm feeling some resistance for, but is probably my most important one. What I do is I create a little ritual around that, a focus ritual. And I can do this for 2 things or 3 things in the day, but I like to pick at least one. And so let's say I'm writing a book. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that book at 2:00. put it on the block. And then 2 o'clock rolls up and I'm like, oh, I want to do something else, anything else but this. So when I recognize that, I just pause and I take a breath. I then might prepare by clearing things out of the way. I like to put my phone out of the way so I'm not looking at that. Turn off any notifications. I might make myself a hot cup of tea, and then I open the document and I let myself just sit with that document for a little bit, like review where things are at, think about what I want to write about, take a sip of tea, and think about my intention. Like, why am I doing this? Why does this matter to me? Because right now I'm showing up with like, I have to, I should, I need to, but I choose to. There's a reason why I put this on my block. It's because this matters to me. I care about this, and I let myself connect to, why does this matter? This allows me to connect to that and feel more lit up. And then I start doing the writing. And I close out with a little bit of gratitude as well. Celebrate some kind of accomplishment and close it out when I'm done. So even if it's a 30-minute block, at the end of the block, close it out. I'm done here. If I have some accountability, I might send that writing to someone or let them know that I did it. And I have some gratitude and some celebrations. And that's my focus ritual. And I can do that not just with writing, but really anything, including this very video. So that would be the third ritual. It's actually in between rituals 1 and 2, but I wanted to do it in that order. So there's the morning planning and really like clarity ritual. There's the evening closeout ritual and review. And then in between, at some point, there's a focus ritual where I really allow myself to focus on the thing that matters to me, but that I'm resisting. And these are 3 examples of rituals in the Workday. And you can do things to elevate them even more. Light a candle, play some music, and bring some movement into it, or dance. Do it with someone else. These are some things you can do to have a ritual, but the main thing is how you're being about it. Are you trying to just get through it and just have this be done like you are everything else in your life? Or are you elevating this to something that actually matters, that you really want to show up for in a different way? And that's what I would suggest, is really be with this, devote yourself to this. It's another word that can come, be associated with religion, is devotion. But what if we could bring devotion to our relationships, to our self-care and exercise, and then devotion to what we care most about in our purpose work? What if we could fully devote ourselves with our full hearts, our full awareness, and full selves? What would that be like? And that's what these rituals are all about. Let me know in the comments what you use already or what you'd like to create for yourself in terms of ritual. Okay. Thank you, my friends.